Council elections, Wollondilly Shire Council residents, the facts, what you need to know. In 2008, infrastructure backlog was $24 million. The average rate was $803.31. Wollondilly councillors allowed council to increase our rates by 40.6% from 2008 to 2013-14, as you can see by the figures below. Your rates, the average person's, went from $803.31 to $1183.14. That's right, you paid an additional $379.83 more. Now remember, the infrastructure backlog in 2008 was $24 million. The rate increases are approved on the basis that the primary purpose is infrastructure backlog. So if residents paid an additional $379.83 each to reduce the infrastructure backlog, then it makes sense to have a backlog that is lower than $24 million. Yeah? Perfect. Well, let's see what our council had managed to do. In 2014, our infrastructure was, wait for it, $47,242,000. That's our infrastructure backlog according to June 30, 2015 financial records. So council have managed to get you to pay an additional $379.83 to have an increase or worse infrastructure than we did in 2008. In 2015, they implemented a further increase to rates to address the backlog of 50.72%. Now let's remember, 40.6% increase has already been applied, or $379.83. That managed to take the infrastructure backlog from $24 million to $47,242,000. That's a fact. How? Well, because the SRV or rate increase is approved under a general purpose instead of specific purpose. So what is the difference between specific and general purpose when it comes to rate increases? When a rate rise is approved for a specific purpose, it can only be used for that purpose, i.e. infrastructure backlog. Whereas if it's approved for general purpose, it can be used for anything that is a council function. So is Wollondilly rate rise under the correct purpose? General can be used for anything, specific only infrastructure backlog. Remember, this is what the submissions say. So let's see what has occurred since the increases with Wollondilly Shire Council. Money was obtained to address the infrastructure backlog by way of a 50.72% on top of an already 40.6% rate increase, which has actually made our infrastructure backlog increase by, you guessed it, $23 million. Why? Because it was approved for use under general purpose instead of specific purpose. So it could in fact have been used to extend the mayoral chain, employ more staff, making administration top heavy, implement pay rises to councillors and staff, and significant improvement to council chambers. Did any of those things happen? Well, all of them happened, and all of them cost money. So where did that money come from? Not likely to get a grant for a mayoral chain, or improvements to a building that's not really dilapidated, or for rate rise, or for pay rises when your inefficiency is very high. Now we need to remember, council's inefficiency grew by 215% in 2 years, so it was less efficient than what it's required to be under the Local Government Act. So where did the money come from? It could have come from the rate increase meant for the infrastructure backlog. Because remember, it is for general purpose, not specific purpose. So if 40.6% increase took our infrastructure backlog from $24 million to $47,242,000 because it was approved under general purpose. So another 50.72% rate increase has been approved, and you guessed it, under general purpose. What makes you believe a further 50.72% increase approved under general purpose will lower the backlog of infrastructure based on council's previous actions, which were approved by a majority of councillors? You are giving more money to exactly the same team, and you believe they will do something different than what they have repeatedly done for the last 8 years. And that is use the money that is obtained under the guise of addressing infrastructure backlog to, in effect, increase our backlog from $24 million in 2008 to $47,242,000 in 2015, which in my opinion equals same team, same outcome. So what does that mean for you? Well, look at this. If your property is zoned residential town, your rates will go from $1,049 to $1,576. That increases to $527. If your property is zoned residential rural, your rates will go from $1,736 to $2,625. That's an increase of $889. If your property is zoned business rate, your rates will increase from $2,121 to $3,208. That's an increase of $1,087. If your property is zoned light industrial, your rates will increase by $14.90 to $22.53. That's an increase of $7.63. If your property is zoned farmland, your rates will increase by $24.88 to $27.54. That's an increase of $266. That averages to $703.67 per household. Now remember what they did with the last increase in rates. They managed to increase our backlog by $23 million. That's a fact. For those of you not convinced, I'm going to show you what this looks like in cold hard cash. This is the amount of money that you have already given to council to address the infrastructure backlog. And that's times 15,000 residents. Okay, so you've got $379.80 by 15,000. Now they want you to give $703.67 on top of that. This amount from each resident took the backlog from 24 million up to 47,242,000. What do you think this amount's going to do? Because it's at 47,242,000 and times that by 15,000 residents. Now, you have already had a rate increase of $379.83. Add to that an additional approved increase of $703.67. That's a total of $1,083. That's right, council has already approved the increase average to $1,083.49. So let's break this down. Firstly, what does $1,083.49 look like? I've just shown you. Now, this is what you can get for it. This money equals the average weekly groceries is $220, so that'll buy you about 5 weeks of grocery shopping. Car, the average cost to run a car, now this is not with repayments, which is the primary transportation in the Shire, is $200 a week. You can get 5.5 weeks of car maintenance, and let's face it, you'll need it with some of these roads. Electricity, cost of household electricity is $90 a week. That's in high season. This money could provide you with 12 weeks of electricity in high season. Phone and internet, the average cost is about $30 a week. This money could give you 36 weeks of internet and phone access. School fees, this could give you 14 weeks of schooling for your child. The average cost to school a child in the public school is $4,000. New South Wales' average infrastructure backlog is $36 million. Wollondilly, however, has managed to take it from $23 million in 2008 to $47,242,000. And this is with increases, okay? And apparently, according to the minister, they were deemed fit. This could be because when you request a rate increase, you only have to demonstrate a need. Infrastructure is deemed a need according to the Local Government Act. But that doesn't mean you have to use it for that, only that a need is there. So, if council never gets the backlog fully up to date, then they will always have a need for an increase. As with a need comes an increase in rates. So what does it look like to you? An increase of 40.6% took our infrastructure backlog from 24 million to 47,242,000. Do you think this need will ever go away with the current team, based on previous years? I don't think it. In my opinion, I predict no. This could in fact be council's cash cow. That's just my opinion. Council is simply doing what is allowed, but it is not right. You should have to demonstrate that you have reduced the cost of the need, which is the infrastructure backlog, before you get more money for the same thing, particularly when the need has not reduced but actually increased to almost double. Councillors can make this happen, and that's with increases of 40.6% and 50.72%. The figures are there. That totals $1,083.49. Now, if we times that by approximately 15,000 ratepayers, that equals the first one, which is $379.83, that's already been implemented. That generated $5,697,450. Okay, and these are all approximations. Now, if we add to that the additional 50.72, which will generate $10,555,050 approximately, combine that together, that'd be $16,252,350. Again, approximately. Now add those two together, okay, and you get $39,494,350, which is what should have been used for maintenance and backlog, okay, and which doesn't appear to have been used. All right, so this current team has cost ratepayers approximately $39,494,350 by failing to maintain the infrastructure and address the backlog obligations under the Local Government Act. So if 39 million didn't go into maintenance and backlog, where did it go? Can you afford this? Infrastructure backlog increasing, inefficiency increasing, pay rises increasing, services decreasing. Council's job is to use council resources, public money, responsibly and reasonably. How do you get a pay rise when you are demonstrating a high level of inefficiency? Wollondilly Shire Council has demonstrated this, and those who oversee it are councillors. The 50.72% rate increase is advertised for backlog, but the fine print is that it can be used for general purpose. Translation, they don't have to use it for the backlog, but this can be changed. Councillors could order that the SRV rate increase be only allowed to be spent on backlog. This was asked in June and July 2015 and remains for general purpose. Okay? So with an election, can you afford to part with an additional $700 or a combined total of $1,083? Can you afford to give them this money out of your pocket? If councillors want your vote, they have 1 month to change the SRV rate increases from general purpose to specific purposes. If not, maybe it's time for some new blood within council. Okay? Yes, this can be done in caretaker mode. If council are saying it's going to backlog, then change it from general purpose to specific purpose. There will be no impact if that is what they are actually doing. It's time for action, and the countdown is on. Not only can your vote change who the councillors are that are supposed to oversee how council operate, but if councillors need to replace the executive team for non-compliance or wasteful spending, not using resources, public money, then the executive team can be replaced in full if they are not performing. How this affects you if council are not maintaining the infrastructure and applying the backlog. Things like roads would be fixed using premium fill, Bargo fire station could be upgraded, noxious weeds could be addressed, therefore reducing storm damage from the recent storms, increases in jobs locally for road crew, most importantly the reduction in rates over the long term, and our rate increases would be in line with the CPI. Your voice matters. In September you will get the opportunity to vote, and all I am asking is that you remember what this decision can do to those struggling families who will have to cut back to find this extra money. Maybe it's your brother or sister, grandmother, or just someone you know who can't really afford this. Can every family afford to give up this amount of money? Take a look at it. This is a huge amount of money to families, and that's what you're being asked to give up with this team. Your councillors can change this prior to the election. They can submit a motion to change the SRV rate increase from general to specific purpose. Remember, under specific purpose, the rate increase could be only used for infrastructure backlogs. Under general purpose, it can be used to maintain infrastructure, improve buildings, increase the mayoral chain, pay rises, or whatever else they want to use it for. Maintenance of infrastructure needs to come out of general revenue. Guess what? The SRV rate increase being general purpose could be used as general revenue or could be classed as general revenue. If according to the Office of Local Government and the Treasury Corporation's figures, if maintenance isn't being met, then a backlog occurs. It's time for your councillors to act. Request a motion be put forward that SRV be changed from general purpose to specific purpose retrospectively and immediately, so as to be in line with their obligations as to councillors under the Local Government Act. If not, come September, vote in people who will do the right thing and submit this motion and hopefully pass it. Go to our Facebook page, Wollondilly Community Issues, to keep up to date on all council issues. The other thing that you need to remember is that have a look at how long some of these councillors have been in council, okay? I can understand maybe 1 term, they're still learning. But if you've been in there 2, 3, 4 terms and this is how you're operating, I gotta wonder, are you actually doing what's in the best interest of the community?